Hey folks, this is Dr. Belinda Wilkerson from Steps to the Future, welcoming you to another Facebook Live College Conversations. So you want to be a psychologist. I am so thrilled when people have the opportunity to join in with these because this is a great way for you to learn about a career from someone that is currently in the field or from someone who is studying to be in the field. My guest this evening is someone that I have known just about all of her life, and it's really wonderful to see the growth and the changes and what she's doing as a professional. So let me bring her on the screen and I'll introduce her to you. So everyone, this is Dr. Keya Wiggins Jackson, who is a licensed psychologist who specializes in crisis intervention, group therapy, and emotion-focused interventions. She's also a visiting professor at the University of West Florida. And she has a video series, if you get a chance to look at it. It's on YouTube, and it's called Tell It Like It Is Tuesday. So I would welcome you, Dr. Keya,
Thank you.
to this. So I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you being here. And just start off tell us a little bit about your education. How did you get into this field? What was it about this field that interested you?
Well, I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I took my first psychology class in high school, which now seems like a really long time ago. But I had some early childhood experiences of racism, and I think as a little kid, I realized that uh, the people that were behaving in a way that was racist toward me weren't bad people, but I didn't understand their motivation. And so I think I developed an interest in human motivation at that point, and then realized when I met psychology in high school that I might be able to figure that out. And so I decided to pursue psychology at the undergraduate level, and then realized that you can't do anything with a psychology degree at the undergraduate level. And so at some point, my interest switched from just being interested in human motivation in general to then being interested in racism in the African American psyche, which is kind of what my focus was during my graduate studies. So, that kind of led me there. And then after getting a master's, I felt like, 2 years for me wasn't enough. I really, I love the field of psychology. I wanted to make sure that I was, a master level clinician. And it felt like the 2 years at the master's level just flew by. And I had a couple of mentors that really encouraged me to continue my education. And so I applied for doctoral programs and got into Indiana State University and a few others. And I chose ISU, and that's where I graduated in 2011.
Okay. So what was it that made you choose Indiana?
It was the stipend that they
Great.
offered. And there was a couple of professors that I really wanted to work with there. And one, unfortunately, ended up leaving prior to me getting there. But I had a really good relationship with another, Dr. Michelle Boyer, who was my mentor during the time that I was there.
Okay. And that's really important what you just said about the stipend, because I think people need to understand that when you go to graduate school, especially when you're in a doctoral program, having the opportunity to get any kind of fellowships, the stipends really, really helps a lot. So people need to think about that if you're planning on going on into, doctoral programs, you need to look for those types of opportunities.
Right.
So I think we have a student here, Thea Scott, saying hi,
yes,
Dr.
Thea
Wiggins.
is a former graduate student of mine. Hi, Thea.
Okay. Thank you, Thea, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Make sure you share this out with people so that they get a chance to join in. Okay. So tell me, when you were in your doctoral program, what types of things, what type of activities or teaching or whatever that you had to do in order to successfully complete that program?
So I went to a program that was, you can choose doctoral programs that are more clinically based or more research focused. I went to one that was a little bit more clinically based, although there was a stable research component. And so one of the things that I did from it's been a while now, but after being there for, I guess, a semester or two, you start your clinical work. And so I worked at a community agency for about 2 years while I was there, which was great experience. So it was an outpatient community agency for adults.
Okay.
I also worked at a university and, did university counseling, which is something that I continued up until 2017, 2018.
Okay.
So, and I probably started, I'm guessing, around 2011 at the College Counseling Center. And so I had those 2 clinical placements or rotations while I was there. I also, obviously was a full-time student while I was there.
Mm.
There was some opportunities to TA that while I was there as well. And so I did some of that as well.
Okay.
Multicultural class, diversity classes, things like that.
Okay. So folks out there listening to this, so it's important for you to understand these are all the types of activities that you need to be prepared for if you plan to major in something like psychology and then you want to go on and become a psychologist. It's not just go to the classes and do the book work. There's all those
Not at
internships.
all.
Right. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot more. And I think it's important for people to understand that so that when they fully start looking for a career pathway, they understand what it is that it will, what it includes. So what are your main responsibilities as a psychologist?
Well, that's a good question. So I actually moved back to the area. I'm originally from Mobile, but I moved back to the area in 2011 for a job at the counseling center as a psychologist. At that time, I was a postdoc, so it was prior to getting licensed. And my job duties were the job duties that you would have as a full-time psychologist in a counseling center at the college level. And so you do outreach activities, meaning, you might do workshops for students on stress management and healthy relationships and things like that. I, of course, did face-to-face individual therapy. I did group therapy while I was there as well, consultation, crisis intervention, things like that.
Okay.
And it wasn't until 2016-ish that I started my own private practice. But I also started teaching at UWF in 2012 as an adjunct. So I was
Okay.
full-time in the counseling center, basically doing what psychologists do in counseling centers, and then also teaching adjunct in different programs. So I taught in the psychology department and other departments as well, both online classes and face-to-face classes. And then in 2016, I started my own private practice. And so there, I do a lot of couples counseling. Relationships is one of my specialties. I also serve on the board here of the African American Heritage Society. And so with that role, I do a lot of public speaking engagements about African American mental health, which is another passion of mine. And then I teach now full-time, as you mentioned, at the University of West Florida. So I left my position in the counseling center as a psychologist in 2018 and joined the psychology department as a full-time visiting assistant professor in 2018.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the work that you're doing in mental health.
Okay.
With
Okay. So one of the things that I really am passionate about is healthy relationships. And that really, when I say that, people automatically think about romantic relationships, but relationships come in many forms. So you have a relationship with yourself, that's your self-esteem. You have relationships with your parents, coworkers, and of course, romantic partners, siblings. And so, I operate from a clinical philosophy that a lot of symptoms, whether it be depression or anxiety, psychiatric symptoms, can be traced to an interpersonal cause. So people feel depressed because they're lonely, or, they feel sad because they feel rejected. And so, a lot of my work centers around helping people have healthy esteem and then also having healthy relationships. Another passion is African American mental health. I'm really looking forward to, at the University of West Florida, I'm actually teaching a class this upcoming fall. It's online. It's the psychology of the African American experience. And so this is a class where, we discuss issues that are relevant to the African American community in regard to the psychology of the African American population. So I'm excited about that. That's another passion that I have as well.
And with everything going on right now in our
Yeah,
society, I'm sure that class will be one of the more popular classes on
I hope so.
campus.
Yeah, I
Yes,
hope so.
definitely. So what
Yeah.
would you say to someone who was interested in um, choosing this field as a psychologist? What kind of advice would you give to a young person?
I would say enter the field with an open mind. So when I thought about being a psychologist or doing therapy, the things that I thought I would be interested in
Mhm.
aren't the things that I'm doing now. So, I never thought I wanted to teach. I'm loving it. you know, I thought I wanted to work with kids, but then I had some clinical placements at the master's level with children and decided that that's not my cup of tea. I think that there are some people that are very talented at communicating with children. I am not one of those people. And so, I just do better with adults. I never would have known that I would have been so interested in relationships. And, that kind of blossomed from my experience with group therapy, and just watching how people form healthy relationships in group therapy, and then kind of translating that to other areas of my work. So I would say enter into it with an open mind. Some people enter into it feeling like this is exactly what I'm going to do,
Right.
and you don't know yet because you haven't had the experiences that you need to have to make those decisions. So open-mindedness, and then be ready to work hard. So,
Mm.
I put my life on hold for the 10 or 11 years that I was in college. My life centered around going to school. So of course, when I graduated, I was all about my social life. But being, a doctoral student, and, I just went straight through. So I got a
Mm.
bachelor's, a master's, and a doctoral degree, and didn't take any breaks. And, in hindsight, it was stressful. I sacrificed a lot, but I'm glad that I did it that way because it worked for me to be able to invest now in other areas of my life without worrying about writing papers and, doing
Right.
clinical placements and things like that.
Right. That's so true. So would you recommend that to someone that is going into the profession today?
If you don't have any kids and you don't have no major bills to pay, yes, go ahead and this is what you want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I just think that it's really hard, when think about what it's like to be a college student. I don't
Right.
remember what that's like because that happened, 9 years ago,
Mhm.
or 10 years ago. And so to leave college, enter into the world where you're working 40 hours a week and things like that,
Mhm.
and then readjust sometimes can be kind of difficult. And so if you have the ability to go straight through, of course, this is my bias because I did it that way. I would say, yeah, go ahead, go for it. Get it all over with so that you can, enjoy your life after you get your degree with no distractions.
Okay. So in your position, what do you like doing the most? What's your favorite part of your work?
My favorite thing to do is couples counseling
Okay.
right
And
now.
why is
I mean,
that?
that could change. Just like I said before, like right now, I would say 2/3 of my caseload is couples. And it is energizing for me. There's a lot that happens in couples counseling. It can be very intense. And I'm
Mhm.
someone who personally, I'm a very impatient person. And one of the things that we learn in graduate school and in any multicultural class that you take when you're learning to be a counselor, one of the things that you learn is that who you are personally is who you are professionally. It's really hard to separate the two. And so, couples counseling, group counseling, things that are high energy really appeal to me because I don't have to wait for stuff to happen. There's so much happening in the room, that I can attend to. So I really enjoy couples counseling. And then, I see the same themes over and over and over again. A lot of couples will come to couples counseling thinking that their issue is novel, and
Right.
it's not, And so, the first thing is them realizing that this is not a novel issue. And sometimes that can be healing up in and of itself. But
Mhm.
then watching them build the skills that they need to recover from whatever trauma has happened in their relationship, to me, is really rewarding.
Okay, that's good. So what do you like least about the work you do?
Paperwork.
Mm,
That's not fun. Like sitting at the computer and writing notes for several, hours, or
yes.
things like that. I would say that that's probably what I like the least about the job is the
Okay.
paperwork. Mhm.
I can understand that because,
Mhm.
I love working with my kids. I love
Mhm.
when we're having conversations. I love when they have those
Mhm.
aha moments and
Yep.
they're right on track with everything. And then I'm like, oh, now
You got to write it all
I've
down.
got to write it all
Yep.
down. Yeah, that I hate that part too. I hate
Uh-huh.
that part too. So
Yeah.
do you still have your private practice?
I do.
Oh,
Yeah. So
yeah.
that's where I'm
So
seeing couples.
that's all the paperwork part. So
That's all
yeah,
the paperwork. Yeah.
yes, yes. So how does your job fit into your lifestyle? Like, how does that, are
Okay.
are you working just certain hours a day, or do
Yeah.
you work 5 days a week? How does
Right.
that work for you?
Well, I would say that one of the benefits to getting a doctorate in psychology is the autonomy that comes along with that.
Okay.
So you can, obviously you have the option of signing up for an 8 to 5, which is where I was, a few years ago. But you also have the autonomy of creating your own um, your own schedule. And so for me, working, being a visiting assistant professor, I teach 4 classes. And so
Mm,
typically, before pre-COVID, those would be in-person classes. I may have one or two, online classes, but for the most part, they were in-person classes. Now we're shifting. The university is shifting more to online, at least in the fall. So I'll be teaching 4 online classes. But that offers me some autonomy because, I have classes that I have some liberty, some say so at what time and what days these classes are
okay.
offered. I have office hours that I get to create myself. And there's my private practice. I usually do 2.5 days at the most, private practice. And so, that's scheduled and managed by me because I'm the sole proprietor of that business.
Right.
And so now with COVID, I'm
Mhm.
working from home. And so I'm teaching online from home. And I'm also seeing clients via telehealth. I use HIPAA compliant software. And so it offers a lot of autonomy for me because I get to create my own schedule. And it's been great. One of the benefits to COVID has been being able to be at home with my son, who's 7 months.
Mm.
But it's really hard to get work done with a 7-month-old. So,
I'm sure it must be. I said that was
yeah.
one of the great things when everything went online working from home is because
Hmm.
we just have dogs and cats to contend with. Everybody's
Hmm.
grown and out of the house. So
Hmm.
I really commend you for for getting that work done with the
Hmm.
7-month-old.
Yeah,
'Cause
it's difficult. Things that used to take me. That was one thing that I actually. You didn't ask me this. This is one thing that I
no, it's
actually had to
fine.
learn in being a mother who was prior to that. I mean, I maybe worked 50 or 60 hours a week.
Mhm.
At least, and would work the weekends too. Just doing stuff for the classes and private practice and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And then having my son, all of that stopped, and I had to redefine what it meant to be productive. And so, things that used to take me, I could sit down, knock this out, I'm done in an hour, now could take me 3 hours. And
Right.
it took me a while to adjust to that because I felt like I wasn't being productive. Because before I had all of this stuff to, I could, all the checkbox, all the check boxes off my to-do list, and I could say, look at all that I've done today, I'm done. But when
Right.
I had my son, there's no checklist or to-do list for changing diapers and feeding him and spending time with her, playing with him. And so I really had to reconceptualize what it meant to be productive. And that's probably something that I'm still, I'm still in the process of teaching myself that. But that's probably been the biggest adjustment for me, being a professional for so long and then,
Mhm.
having a child at the same time.
Right. And for women, that is always a concern. It's always
Yeah.
a concern. When I've talked to
Hmm.
friends who are working from home, their
Hmm.
kids are at home, so now they're also their kids'
Hmm.
teachers,
Right.
and they're still trying to get their work done. It
Yeah.
really is a juggling act, and it really is trying to figure out, how do I do this?
Hmm.
How do I do this and attend to everyone's needs and also practice self-care? So
Right.
what do you do for self-care with all of that's on your plate already?
Well, luckily, I have a very supportive husband, and he really helps me a lot with our son. So he actually had 3 months paternity leave, so we got to spend that time together. And then when he went back, so now he's back at work and he's working full
Yeah.
time. But when he's here, he's really engaged with the baby. So sometimes I use that time to work uninterrupted. Other times I might use that time to kind of relax and spend some time with the family, or I might go for a walk. For me, self-care is sometimes getting outside of the house and walking if it's a nice day. On Sundays, it's been a tradition in my household, for a while now, that I will go in the bathroom, I'll take a hot bath, I meditate, I have my candles around my bathtub. I have spa music on and everybody leaves me alone. Like nobody talks to me until I come out
That's
and then we can
great.
have a conversation. But that's self-care for me. Meditation has been a really healthy tool for me in terms of self-care. So I do that, try to meditate regularly as well.
Okay, that's really helpful. So with what everybody is experiencing right now, I mean, we've got a viral pandemic going
Yeah.
on, we've got a racial pandemic going
Yeah.
on. People have lost their jobs.
Mhm.
People don't know if they're going to be open their businesses back up.
Mhm.
I mean, we're in a place where we've never been before.
Mhm.
So what are some things that you would suggest to folks to really practice self-care at this time?
Well, I'd mentioned that, I have a bias for meditation, so I'll start there.
Mm.
I think having a regular meditation practice is really helpful. There's a lot of research to support that having a regular meditation practice makes the amygdala, which is the emotional center of your brain, less reactive. And so what that means is that it creates a stronger sense of peace. It makes you feel less reactive. You feel calmer. And you're able to focus a little bit better whenever you have a regular meditation practice. And sometimes people have the wrong impression of what it means to meditate. So sometimes people believe that meditation means that you clear your mind. And that's not what meditation is. It's really just focusing on something. And when you do find that your mind is kind of drifting off, you just come back. So there's different types of meditation that you can do. Insight meditation is focusing on your breath. And so you focus on your breath, and then, what are your grocery list comes to mind, you come back to your breath. Some people do better with like having a visual cue. So maybe you're focusing on a candle, 5 minutes a day, I think is really good for self-care.
Yeah, I have actually started using the Calm app.
Yeah, there's free
And
apps out there. There's the Insight app.
right, yeah,
There are other apps that you have to pay to
right.
use, but I think that any app that just offers you a timer or some guided meditation can really be helpful.
Okay. So we have a question from Marina. She wants to know, how difficult was it to get into college?
To get into college was less difficult than to be in college. um, if you have interest in getting graduate studies in psychology, then you're going to want to have the prerequisites. So you'll be better off having an undergraduate degree in psychology, but that's not always the case. So you might have an undergraduate degree in social work, for instance, and meet the criteria to enter into a master's program in counseling. In terms of getting in, now there's some discussion about what to do with the GRE, especially
Mm,
in the current climate. And so the GRE isn't necessarily the best indicator of student success. And students of color don't typically score as well on standardized assessments, and then when compared to other students. And so there's some discussion about, how much should that count in regard to people being admitted into different programs. And so, but at this point, you have to take the GRE, and they're going to look at your GPA as well at the master's level. And then at the doctoral level, rather, there are some programs that you can enter into from the bachelor's level, and those are typically 6-year programs. They're typically a little bit more competitive because you get your master's while you're in the program, but you don't have to have a master's to get into the program. Um, you can choose to get a master's first. That'll be 2 years, and then you'll have 4 more years of coursework. And so if you're someone who's like, no, I'm not really sure about my GRE, I'm not really sure about, my GPA, it
mhm.
probably would be better to go the route of getting a terminal master's and then applying for a doctoral program if you have that interest.
Okay. All right. And we have another question here from Thea.
Okay.
So she wants to know, would you say someone looking for a career in
Uh-huh.
psychology, would they need to be mentally sound or have a clean bill of mental health before helping
Hmm.
others?
So yes, like you can't be unstable and provide, provide quality clinical services, but nobody's perfect. And so, I would say that the best clinicians are people that have the ability to reflect inward and, be open and non-defensive and be vulnerable to seeking out help for themselves whenever they need that. And having trained clinicians, I would say that the best clinicians in training are the ones that are open to feedback and that are like, oh, okay, well, I can see that there's this area, this blind spot, or this area where I struggle. Let me see what I can do to improve that area in my life. I think some of the best clinicians are clinicians that have had therapy themselves. And
Okay.
unfortunately, there's this, there's stigma about
Mm,
therapy in general, right?
right.
And part of my role in teaching at the University of West Florida, I've taught in the graduate program, the Masters of Counseling graduate program in the psychology department. And I've seen students who hold that bias themselves. That if they go to therapy, then there must be something inherently wrong with them. And I'm
Okay.
like, well, no. If you want to be a therapist, you need to know what it's like to be on the other side. And so I would say that the best therapists are therapists who are open to receiving counseling themselves, and even people who have had that experience of going to counseling. But
Right.
mental stability is vital to the job.
Yeah. That is so true. This past spring, I actually had the opportunity to teach a class at Providence College in their master's level counselor education program,
Mhm.
and it was theories of counseling. And what was interesting was probably three-fourths of the class had all gone through therapy,
Yeah.
and it was interesting how, as we were talking about the different theories, they were recognizing some of
Right.
the work that they had
Yeah.
with their therapist, and
Hmm.
they all said to it, every single one of them talked about how helpful having that experience was
Hmm.
for them in taking this particular class.
Hmm. Thank you for that question, Thea. That was a good
Yeah,
question.
that was a
Yeah.
great question because I think people, like you said, there's such a stigma
Hmm.
around mental health, especially in the Black community.
Yes,
We're
especially.
Yeah, so it's
Mhm.
and I'm just thinking with everything that's going on now, would people be more open to therapy?
Well, I have to be honest, I have had a lot of people who identify as Black and African American reach out to me personally for therapy recently. Some of it is related to the pandemic, others is related to just overall stress, and of
Right,
course the current climate doesn't help you
right.
people to manage that stress. And a lot of times, what I hear is when I ask, "Okay, so how did you hear about my services?" A lot of times, people are looking for clinicians that look like them, and
Right.
unfortunately, I'm one of very few in this area, African American female psychologist who see adults, who sees adults.
Okay.
And so a lot of people are I'm finding seeking me out because they're wanting to work with an African American therapist.
Okay, that's really interesting. Um, so we have another question here from
Mhm.
Marina. She wants to know, did psychologists help you solve personal
Mhm.
problems, if any?
Yeah, it does. Like, and thinking about going back to, my experience of teaching at the graduate level, master students who are training to be clinicians. Yeah, it's like when you start to learn about why people are the way they are, and you start to learn theories, like you were mentioning, to understand the people in your life or the experiences that you've had. You start to, the blind spots that you had about who you are start to be revealed to you, and you learn things about yourself, and now you have, you know for instance, I'll give an example. So in doing couples counseling, I'm watching, weekly, couples engage in problems that I might see in my relationship, right? And so it's not an ethical way to practice to use myself to understand other people, but in using theories that I've learned to understand them, it helps me to also use those theories to understand what might be happening for myself as well. Now, when I get to a point where I'm seeing something that I'm unable to resolve myself, whether it be like my own sort of esteem issues or, whatever, then that's when I think it would be appropriate to, go see a therapist, which I have in the past. So I've seen a therapist and be like, okay, so help me to resolve this issue or this problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that question, Marina. Really
Yeah, thank you,
appreciate
Marina.
it.
Good question.
Yeah. So what are some of the so if you could do this all over again, would you choose the same path?
Yeah. You know what? I actually had, okay, so I graduated in 2011 and I started teaching adjunct in 2012. And in
Okay.
2011, after I graduated, I was studying for the EPPP, which is the licensing exam for psychology. So even after you get a PhD in psychology, you're not a licensed psychologist. You still have to sit for the exam to become a licensed psychologist. And most people fail that exam the first time. And so I was studying for the exam and I was teaching at the same time. And I had my students who were graduate level students at the time, master students, ask me, is it worth it? And I was like, listen, I don't know. Ask me after this test is over. And then I can answer you honestly. But I mean, I felt like I just graduated, I got my life back, and now my life is gone again because I'm studying almost
Right.
24 hours a day and also teaching you guys. So, but here I am 9 years later. So you asked me that question, and I would say yes, it was all worth it. I'm glad that I did it the way that I did it, in terms of just going straight through and getting finished before at 3 degrees before my 30th birthday. So I just went
Wow.
straight through. And I'm glad that I did it that way. I don't think that it works for everybody, but it did work for me. I have no regrets.
That's
I would
great.
never go back to school ever again.
You're done.
I'm
You're done.
done.
You're
I
done.
thought about because I was really into nutrition, and I do think that it's a field that is ignored too much by the psychological community and by the medical community, because I think it's important that you're able to view your clients from a holistic perspective. But I can't go back to school. Like I just at this point in my life, I can't make myself do that right now.
So with all of that, what kind of professional development do you do? Are there conferences that you
Mhm.
attend, or so could you tell us a little bit about that for a psychologist?
Yeah. So for a licensed psychologist, you have to receive, I think it's like 40, or you have to earn because you don't just receive it. You have to actually get the CEU. So you have to do 40 continuing education credits every 2 years to maintain your license. And that's the minimum. So really you should be doing more than that, but at minimum you need at least 40. And so you can get those from attending conferences, you can do online trainings, things like that. I am a certified group psychotherapist. My certification comes from the American Group Psychotherapy Association, AGPA. And so they have a really big conference every year. I don't know what's going to happen now with COVID, but they have a really good big conference every year that's awesome, and is focused on group psychotherapy. So I typically go there. I do, with COVID, I've done more online trainings than I normally would. But you just find topics or areas where you feel like you need continuing education, and then you find trainings to do that. And those are very easy to find.
Okay. Okay, that's good. I'm actually in the middle of last week I did a summer institute online. This week I'm doing the American School Counselor Association
Yeah.
conference, and it's all virtual. And then in
Hmm.
2 weeks I'll be doing the Independent Educational Consultants Association virtual
Okay.
conference. So there's lots of professional development out there for all
Yes.
fields, and everything
Hmm.
is going virtual. It has to.
Yeah. And when
Um,
you're a psychologist, and a lot of us were trained as generalists, but then we have our niches. And
right.
so, my niche, group therapy, couples counseling, African American psychology. So when I look for continuing education, those are the umbrellas that I'm looking for, because I want to make sure that I'm really fine tuning those skills if that's what I'm going to be doing most of the time. So I did a lot
Okay.
of trainings on couples counseling and things like that this time around.
Okay. You have a you have an admirer out there in the
Oh, that's my
audience.
husband.
Thank you for
Yeah.
letting us borrow Dr. Keya. We appreciate it.
Oh, that's our son, my husband. Yeah.
Oh, that is so cute. So what else would you um let me see. Let me see what question I want to ask. So what are some of the current issues and trends that you see happening in this field that people should know about if they're considering this pathway?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is COVID,
Mm,
and I'm not really sure how it's going to affect people's training because so much of our training is face to face
right.
contact with clients. And so, for me personally, as a licensed psychologist, I had no interest in doing telehealth prior to COVID.
Okay.
And so, and I actually had a lot of bias against telehealth. I'm like, you're not even in the room with them. How you gonna do couples counseling on the computer? But then this happened, and I really had to, number one, seek out those professional resources to educate myself about, well, what is telehealth? How does it work?
Mhm.
And then I had to be open to using this new medium. And I'm assuming that the same might be true for people who are in training right now, that their training is going to be affected by COVID, and that they might have to, telehealth might be a new wave in the profession. So, you know, I
So
think that would be.
did your professional organizations do they help folks with learning how to do
Yes.
telehealth?
Yeah, they
Okay.
do. There's so many trainings out there on telehealth, and there's software that you can purchase that can be HIPAA compliant. So,
Okay.
to make sure that you're doing it right. So I don't do, even though some of the professional organizations, the licensing boards relaxed some of the criteria for telehealth with COVID just to make it more accessible to people. So technically you could do it on FaceTime, but I'm not. I'm using HIPAA compliant software
Right.
and trying to, of course, make sure that I'm still respecting my client's confidentiality and privacy.
Yeah, that's so true. So we have another question from Marina. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Marina. She said the family institution is changing. Some say it's a crisis. Do you agree?
So I don't want to make assumptions in regard to what's meant by family institution,
Okay.
but I'm guessing that you mean that like something about the family system is changing, and that might be in crisis. I don't know that I agree that in general the family institution or the family systems are in crisis. I think that with this pandemic, there have
Mhm.
been certainly more challenges to the family system. And I also think that for some people, there have been more opportunities for the family system where they've been forced to spend more time together.
Mhm.
And that can result in many different ways. It can mean that you decide that this person that you've been avoiding, for the past 5 years of your relationship, that now you have to spend time together, that, perhaps, oh, traditional family.
Yeah.
Okay. So perhaps, you're less invested in the relationship, or you can seek it as an opportunity to, invest more in the relationship and to heal the relationship or whatever problems or issues that you have. So I don't know that the traditional family, I don't know that I would say that it's in crisis, but I do think that it's probably stressed by the current circumstances.
Okay. And I'd kind of, well, personally, it's just my husband and I here.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I work full time
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
he's retired.
Hmm.
And it's just understanding. And one of the reasons I went out and got a space at a co working space is
Hmm.
because I always felt so guilty because he'd come in and want to have a conversation.
Hmm.
And I'm in the middle of doing something and
Hmm.
explaining to him that when you come in and interrupt me, that breaks my train of thought. Then it takes me
Hmm.
that much longer to get
Hmm.
back to where I need to be. And plus, I'm a workaholic.
Hmm.
I'll work, 7 days a week, multiple
I used to
hours.
be like that.
Yes. Well, if I had a 7 month
Yeah.
old, I don't think I would be able to do that.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, just having 2 dogs and 2 cats,
Hmm.
I'm able to do a lot more. But definitely if I had a baby, there is no way I'd be able to
Right.
put that much time into my work.
Hmm.
It just wouldn't work. It just would not happen at
Uh-huh.
all. At all. So tell me, where do you see this profession going? Do you see it? I was reading some stuff on ONET, and they
Hmm.
were talking about a bright outlook for this particular profession. So, do you
Hmm.
see that? Do you see it growing? Do you see more people going into actually going as far as a doctoral program
Hmm.
in order to become a licensed psychologist?
I think so. And I think that there's such a great need for really well trained clinicians who can offer quality services to people. And so my impression, or I guess my hope, is
Mm,
that you know, nationwide and at the government, the state level, that there'll be more of an investment in mental health. I think that one of the greatest challenges to the field has been funding
right.
and managed care. And so a lot of clinicians are moving away from being on insurance panels because they don't
Mm,
want to have to diagnose in a certain way to treat. They don't want to have to, um, do things that don't necessarily feel ethical for their practice
right.
because of managed care. And so I think that that's an external threat that we continue to struggle with. But my hope is that um, that more funding is channeled into mental health just in general, especially given the current climate.
Okay. Yeah, living here in Fayetteville with Fort Bragg, we have quite a few, veterans who have
Hmm.
mental health issues.
Hmm.
And I don't know if the VA is taking care of all of them,
Yeah.
but we do see quite a few folks that have mental health issues. Some
Hmm.
folks that are homeless, and it's just that we don't see enough facilities and
Right.
enough agencies that can take all of this on. And it's always
Hmm.
about the funding. I
Hmm.
mean, people are always scrambling for grants,
Hmm.
and people and mental health shouldn't rely upon
Right.
grants.
Right. It's a little bit of an afterthought. Yeah, it
Right.
should be. It should be more of a priority. I agree.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So what would you like to leave us with that you would like folks to know? Oh, before I forget, I wanted to talk a little bit about your Tell It Like It Is Tuesday.
Oh,
I know you're
okay.
not doing new ones, but I do want you to
It's been
let
a
people
while.
know about
Yeah.
that resource.
Yeah. So I'll tell you like how it came to be. So
Okay.
I mentioned that part of my clinical style is informed by um, a personal flaw, and I'll own that, which is my impatience, right? And so I just kept seeing these common themes with clients, and I felt like, well, I wonder if there's a way that I can speak to people about these issues who aren't necessarily going to come to therapy but who could benefit from, like a 3 to 5 minute video about it. And so my clinical style is to tell it like it is. I'm
Okay.
very transparent with my clients. Some clients really value that because they don't ever have to wonder what I think or, what my reactions are to things. I'm transparent about what I'm thinking, whether it be clinically or, reactions that I'm having in session or thoughts that I have about what's clinical thoughts that I might have about the dynamics that are happening that I'm observing. And some clients don't like that. They
Mhm.
don't. They would like a softer approach that perhaps I may be. It takes me a little bit more effort probably to communicate in that way. So I figured let me just tell it like it is and let people know, some of the things that I'm observing in my practice, some thoughts that, have come up for me or common themes. Oh, Thea, your student, she did not play. Thanks, Thea. You're right. I don't. So yeah, so telling it like it is kind of the thing that I do clinically and professionally. And I thought that it'd be cool to have a video series where I told it like it is about things that I think people could benefit from knowing. So,
Okay. That's actually how because we haven't seen each other in a number of years.
uh-huh.
And I think one day it popped up, I think, on LinkedIn. And
Okay.
I said, "Oh." So then I started watching them and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, "Oh, these are pretty good. These are
Thank
pretty
you.
good." I said, "I really
Thank
like
you.
this." And it was funny because I said to Dwight, I said, "Come here." I said, "Do you want to see Keya?" And
Oh.
he was like, "Oh my God, that's Keya." So folks, we're talking about I've known Dr. Wiggins since she was a little girl. So
Uh-huh.
so this is
Tiny, like,
really
yeah,
yeah.
less
So
than 4. Yeah.
yes, definitely. So this is
Uh-huh.
really a pleasure for me to be able to see you in all grown up. It's really kind of
Thank
cool.
you.
It's
Thank
really
you.
kind of cool and see the work you're doing and to hear about your passion behind it and your dedication, your
Mhm.
commitment to helping people because Mr. Rogers always said, find the helpers.
Uh-huh.
He always talked about find the helpers, and in this climate that we're living in today, people are definitely, I hope people find you as a helper. More people
Oh, thank
find
you.
you because
I appreciate that.
it's so crucial. It's so
Mhm.
crucial. So any last thing that you'd like to say to folks?
Yeah. So, to the people that might be considering getting advanced degrees in psychology, go for it. It's the hardest thing about getting a graduate degree in psychology is learning to manage your time and learning to get this project in while you're still working on that paper, while you're working, two jobs, and so juggling things. But I think a lot of people, as long as you're willing to put in the effort, it's a possibility for people who maybe don't think it's a possibility for them. I never thought getting a doctorate was a possibility for me. It was not something that I considered doing whenever I entered into a master's program. As I mentioned before, part of my desire to get a master's was wanting to work in the field and not being able to do very much, if anything, at the bachelor's level. And so, master's for me was going to be it. I just decided that I was going to get a master's and be a master's level clinician. As I mentioned before, I had a mentor who really pushed me and said, I think that you should pursue doctoral studies. And I had all of these reasons why I didn't want to do that, and too much money for loans, or I've been in school for 5 years now, and one of the things that she said to me really stuck with me, and she said, people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on homes and cars, and those are things that people can take away from you, but no one will ever take your education away from you. And so for me, I really feel like it was definitely worth it. And that really, I couldn't argue with that. And so, having that conversation with her really drove me to decide to apply for doctoral programs, and it was a success in getting in. So there's that piece that I want to leave to the people that are considering it, that maybe think that, I don't really know if I can do this. I would say, if you have the ability to read, think critically, and put forth the effort, then you'll be fine. To people who might be struggling, whether it be with the current pandemic or the current racial climate, whether it be your esteem or isolation that you're struggling with, I would leave strong encouragement to consider therapy. I know there's a lot of stigma with therapy. You do not have to be crazy to go to therapy. I've been to therapy myself. I'm not crazy. Never been crazy. Most of the people, the people that I see in therapy, they're not crazy. Sometimes you just really need to sit with someone who has been trained to listen in a certain way. So, you might have this friend that you go to for that, or you might have your parent that you go to for that. The difference with a clinician is that they're not using, if they're practicing from an ethical perspective, clinicians don't use themselves to help you. They use their years of education and experience to help you, and that's different. And I think that it's worth it. And if you're working with a clinician who you're not vibing with, which I see a lot of people will seek me out in the community and they'll say, I didn't have a good experience with this clinician. The first thing that I would encourage you to do is to have a conversation with that clinician. So allow them the opportunity to correct whatever it is that's happening in your relationship that's not working for you. And if that doesn't work, terminate. Try somebody else. Don't quit therapy because you had one bad experience of therapy.
Okay. That's fantastic information. I love what your mentor said about
Mhm.
your education's an investment in you. It
Mhm.
really is, and folks cannot take it away from you. This
Mhm.
was that was some fantastic information. I
Mhm.
really appreciate you doing this. And before we sign off, folks, I always like to end with a book. Folks that know me know that I'm all about literacy. I'm all about folks getting educated. I'm all about people educating themselves and reading. So, the book that I want to showcase tonight is called Black Therapists Rock: A Glimpse Through the Eyes of Experts. And what was so telling when you were talking, Dr. Keya, was each one of the therapists that did a chapter in this book
Mhm.
talked about their own journey, their own mental health
Mhm.
journey, and how they got healthy in whatever the situation may have
Mhm.
been in their lives in order for them to arrive at being a therapist who was
Mhm.
able to actually help someone. So again, this is a great book. One of my friends here, local, Daphne Fuller,
Mhm.
is one of the authors of a chapter. So again, Black Therapists Rock. This is a great book, just to hear how people again got to where they are and what the therapy that they went through in order to get there. So
Mhm.
I certainly appreciate you so much. And we have a comment from Thea who said this was
Oh,
so
thank you,
helpful.
Keya.
Thea, thank you so much for
I
participating.
hope
We
you're
really
doing well.
appreciate it. Really appreciate it so much. And oh, someone else is on. Oh,
Oh,
okay.
hey, Erica.
Okay. Yes, Erica, this will be on my YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours, and I'll definitely put that link in the show notes so that you have it. Um, oh, thank you. She says she's going to be sharing this interview with her students.
Oh, great. Thank you, Erica.
So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And anyone else out there that is thinking about a career in this field, um, Dr. Keya, would they be able to contact you if they had a question?
Sure. Yeah, you can contact me directly through my website, which is
Okay.
www.drkeyawiggins.com. So that's KEYAWIGGINS.com.
Okay, let me just
Or
put that
PR,
here right now.
KeyaWiggins.com.
Make sure I do this right. Here we go. Okay, so folks, if you have additional questions, again, that's where you can contact Dr. Keya. Um, I just want to thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome. Thank
I
you for
think it's
having
so important for people to hear from real people
me.
that
Mm-hmm.
are in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and for people to really have an opportunity to hear what a day is like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the struggle with education, your choice to go straight through rather than take any breaks, which worked for you. So
Mm-hmm.
again, thank you so much for joining in. And thank you to all the people who joined in. Make sure you take the opportunity to like this, to share it out with folks that you know. And as I said, this will be up on my YouTube channel within 24 to 48 hours after I put the show notes in here. It's also on my Facebook page, so you can see it there. So there'll be multiple places that you can see it. And my Facebook page is Steps to the Future, and you can just go on there and see it. And my Facebook page is just Belinda Wilkerson. So you will find it there. So again, thank you so much. And everyone, we will see you next week. When next week,
Bye.
College Conversations is on. Who do I have next week? Next week, I actually have a college administrator. So if
Oh,
you're
cool.
interested in working in a college at the administrative level, make sure you tune in next week. So Keya, just stay on for a minute while I end this. And folks,
Yeah.
again, thank you so much. And I'll see you next week for another College Conversations.